Hi, this is another data analysis video, and still focusing on exploratory data analysis. So I recorded a series of videos prior to this that looked at how to tidy and wrangle data to get it into the sort of format where you can do some sort of statistical analysis. I also recorded a video about obtaining descriptive and summary statistics, which is often one of the first steps you would take when you're exploring your data and looking at the different variables you've got. In this video and the ones that follow it, I'm going to focus on visualizing data, and very important, probably the most important exploratory data analysis step. And in today's video, this particular video, I've called it Data Visualization 1. I'm going to focus on scatterplots. And what I'll do in this notebook is I'll demonstrate how to obtain some basic scatterplots for two scale variables using the matplotlib software library and the seaborn software library in Python. So as usual, I'm working in Jupyter notebooks. And to start with, what I'm going to do in this first cell is import the software libraries that we may need that may be useful. So I'm going to import pandas as PD, NumPy as MP. I'm going to import some data sets, so it would be useful to have them available in case we need them. And then I'm going to import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. So matplotlib is common. A common thing to do is give it the nickname PLT, so you can abbreviate how you refer to it when you call methods from matplotlib. And that is kind of one of the core plotting data visualization software library that is used in Python, essentially. In addition to that, I'm going to import another software library called seaborn, and it's conventional to import seaborn as SNS. And seaborn's another plotting library, software plotting library with an awful lot of functionality. It makes very nice plots, and it's built on the base of the matplotlib software library. Okay, so if I run this cell, I should import all four of those libraries that we're going to make use of today. And then I'm going to import a data set, and it's data from a prisoner's dilemma study where participants played a prisoner's dilemma game, and they could either communicate or not communicate with the person they were playing against. So a game theory study, essentially. And this time I've got this data set saved as an Excel spreadsheet, so it's .xlsx in some folder on my computer. So what I'm going to do on this occasion is I'm going to save it as a data frame object called com. So it's community because that's an element of the study, just because it makes sense to me. And where in previous videos what I've done is demonstrate how to use the pandas, the pd.read_csv method. This time I'm going to use pd.read_xl, and I'm going to then pass in the parentheses for that method a string contained within single quotes, which has got the name of the data file, and that's com pd data 2223.xlsx, and then I'll call the head of that data frame, and hopefully that's worked, and it has. And as you see, it imports it as a very nice HTML pandas data frame, very similar to when we use CSV. So if you're using Jupyter notebooks and you use pandas and you try to run this .read_xl file, you may get an error message because there are additional dependencies that you need to import or install in the environment that you're working in. The main one is likely to be something called OpenPyXL. So you need to install that first, and then this method will work, read_xl. Okay, so we've got this data frame here. There are a number of different variables: participant ID, game number, sex, age. What I'm going to focus on is just a couple of these, because this video is about creating scatter plots. So we've got a variable here called agreeableness, and this is a measure of participants' trait agreeableness on a scale from like 0 to 5. And we've got another variable here called total points, and that's kind of an integer value that records how many points they scored in the game. So we've got a kind of like personality trait, how agreeable they are. Higher scores more agreeable. and we've got how many points they scored in the game recorded. Okay, so those are the two that I'm going to focus on. And first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very simple scatter plot for those two scale variables using the standard matplotlib plt.scatter method. Okay, so there are a couple of things that in order to create this plot, there are a couple of things that I have put in here. Firstly, I've used PLT. Obviously, I'm calling matplotlib, and I'm calling the dot figure. Just managed to copy and paste something from that cell. I'm calling the dot figure method, and I'm passing a fig size argument. I'm saying I want this figure to be 8 by 5. So I did that just so it's kind of not tiny when we get the output. So it'd be, I'm assuming that'd be something like 8 centimeters by 5 centimeters, something like that, maybe. And then I'm calling the plt.title, so I'm passing it a string, the title that I want this plot to have. And then underneath here, I'm actually calling the scatter method. So I'm using plt.scatter, which will create a scatter plot. And as a minimum, I've had to specify two variables to use based on the x and y axes. So agreeableness is the first variable. So I put that in first. That's going to go on the x-axis, then a comma, and then total points from our communication data frame object is going to go on the y-axis. And then after that, so there were, if I put a comma here, there are kind of lots of other parameters and arguments you can add. I'm not going to focus on that at the moment. I'm just going to show you how to get a very simple scatter plot out. So plt.x label, so I've specified that I've used a string here to say, put a label on the x-axis saying agreeableness, plt.y label, similar sort of thing, put a label on the y-axis for total points. And then the last thing I've done, plt.show, is just is to call the actual plot. So if I run that cell, what we should see is we've got a scatter plot showing agreeableness on the x-axis and the total points scored. So I can't remember how many there are in this particular data frame, maybe about 30, 40 participants, maybe, or something like that, maybe a few more. But you can see, there seems to be a little bit of a trend sort of going down like this, whereas the more agreeable someone is, the lower the points they gained when playing the Prisoner's Dilemma game. So often maybe they were a little bit too cooperative and they played against someone who was willing to defect and cheat and take more points. Okay, so that's it. That's a nice, simple and neat scatter plot. It's got a title. Axes are titled as well. We can actually change the style there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that again, and you've got like a style option where when using matplotlib, and all I've added here is this extra line of code here, and you see basically I'm using plt.style.use, and then I'm telling it what style to use, and there are a number of different ones. But what I'm gonna use is the ggplot style. So ggplot is quite a sophisticated plotting library that you use in the R programming language, and it creates quite nice looking plots. And if we run this cell, what that will do is give us the same scatter plot as above, but it's kind of done it in it's created it in the same way as you get if you created this plot using ggplot in R. So it's got this nice dark grid background. The title is kind of slightly larger and in bold. So I personally kind of like that style. It's obviously changed the color of the data points as well. Okay, so simple way to obtain a scatter plot using matplotlib, and I've not demonstrated all the functionality. There is an awful lot, such as changing shape of the data points, changing the color, things like that. But one thing that might be useful, it's not the case here in this data set because we don't have too many data points. Often when you create a scatter plot and you've got an awful lot of data, where data points cluster on top of each other, it can just look like a big blob of data points and be quite difficult to visualize or not look particularly good. There is a parameter though that you can adjust in matplotlib that will make those data points more transparent, translucent, so you can see when they're stacked on top of each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to import another data set which has got, which is it's a data set that's quite commonly found online, and it's in the library of data sets that for different software packages such as Seaborn. And it's called TIPS. Basically, it's a data set. I think it's from diners maybe in New York, and it shows kind of how much sort of a customer's bill at a restaurant was, how much tip they left, how many people were in the party, what day of the week, whether it was lunch or dinner, whether they were male or female, that type of thing. So you can see that here, a number of different variables. But if we use the shape method, you can see there are 244 rows, so it's quite a big data set. Okay, so we've got a lot of observations, a lot of participants. And if we were to plot that, a lot of them would stack on top of each other. They'd probably tips would probably be around similar values, and it might just look like a big blob of colour and not be that aesthetically pleasing or informative. But what we can do is add this alpha parameter here, alpha equals 0.5, and that will make the data points a little bit more transparent. So I'm creating a similar plot to the one above. What I've reset the style, so I've reset the style from ggplot to style.use default, just to the default setting. And if we run that now, you can see the tips data. So what I've plotted on the x-axis is the size of the customer's bill, how much their bill cost, and on the y-axis I've plotted the tip, how much of a tip they left. And you could see you can see some of these data points are lighter than others, and that is a function of alpha parameter. So if we just plotted this without adjusting the alpha and they were all the same, density, so all the same transparency, then this area here would look quite messy, and we won't really be able to see how many data points there are. But just adjusting that alpha parameter kind of makes it look a bit better, makes it a little bit easier to visualize, and we can then see where it's darker, we know we've got a larger number of data points clustered. Okay, so that's just some of the basic functionality of using matplotlib. So what I'll do next is I'll demonstrate how to get very similar scatter plots using Seaborn. So Seaborn, as I said, is kind of built on the matplotlib as a base, and the syntax is quite neat and easy, and there's lots of functionality to it. So I'm still going to use the tips data set, and we'll plot that exact same. We will create a scatter plot of that exact same plot we created above using matplotlib. But you can see here we've specified quite a bit of stuff, several lines of code. Using Seaborn here, I'm calling SNS, that was the nickname we gave it, .scatterplot in this case. I'm telling it the data to use is the tips data. The x-axis variable is going to be total bill. The y is going to be the tips. And if I run that, you can see we get quite similar. We get a similar plot to above. It's labeled the axes for us, and so that's quite interesting. And there are lots of extra parameters. I'm just going to demonstrate a few that we can use with Seaborn, and we can just add these where obviously this is easier than adding an extra row, plt.style, plt.etc. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do that plot again, but this time I'm going to change the hue to time. So what it's going to do is, if I run it, that's easy to see. It's basically set the time variable recorded whether it was dinner or lunch where the customer ate. So a categorical variable with 2 levels, and it's set that to different colors. So you can see here by just kind of specifying hue equals the time variable, this categorical dichotomous categorical variable, dinner and lunch. We can see there it separates out the data points by color. So we can see like a lot of the larger tips were people with bigger bills and they were eating at dinner rather than lunch. Okay, so we can go another step beyond that as well. We can as we did above, we use the ggplot style. We can do something similar. With seaborn we can use this method sns.set_style, and there are a number of different styles available. I'm just going to specify dark grid because I like this. So it'll give us the same plot as we've just obtained, but it gives it on that dark grid. Very similar to ggplot, which I personally like. Okay, so just a couple of more things I'll demonstrate. Same sort of thing, I'm just going to add an additional parameter here of hue, and that's going to be the day of the week. So in the data set, the tips data set here, you can see we've got day, Sunday. I believe the days are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday that are recorded in that particular data set. And if I run that, what you can see is we've got our data points plotted, total bill on the X, tip on the Y still. The colours now represent different days of the week. So Sunday's blue, Saturday's this yellowy orange, Thursday's green, Friday is kind of a red colour. And time now, so dinner or lunch, has been designated by these different shaped symbols. Dinner's still a circle, but lunch is now this X sort of dot. Okay, so quite a busy plot there, quite a lot going on. But if it shows you with these different parameters the different things we can do. We're able to visualize and separate out the data by different categories: days of the week, lunch and dinner. Okay, one last thing, if I run that again. So what I've done here essentially is changed the hue and size parameters. Sorry, I've changed the hue parameter and I've added a size parameter. So size would be the size of the data point, and I've specified the size of the data point should reflect the variable size, and that's the size of the party eating dinner. So whether it was one person on their own, 2 people, a group of 3, a group of 4, a group of 5, a group of 6. And similar sort of thing here. We've got total bill on the x-axis, tip on the y-axis, and now we've specified we want the hue to represent the size. So the different colours represent different size groups, but also the size of the dot represents the size of the group. So both of these 2 parameters here are the same variable. And you'll notice that it has automatically changed the palette. Seaborn has changed the colours of the palette, and it's obviously done that based on what it thinks would be the best palette to represent these 6 levels we've got, the size categorical variable. Okay, so that's just a quick bit. There's many other things we could do when we're plotting, creating scatter plots using matplotlib and seaborn, and this was just a quick introduction. I've not shown you how to save if you wanted to save these figures, but it's also possible to do that, save them as PNG files for later use.